That is great. Y'all can get started whenever you want. I know I sent everyone a few of the comments and questions that were posted on Canvas. We've had several more today. So, but they were very, very similar and very complimentary. So I'm going to take it away, and we're so glad you all are here to join us tonight. And welcome to Vertical Harvest and everybody involved.
Would you like us to introduce ourselves?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. I'll start. I'm Jennifer Tennican. I'm the director and producer of the film Hearts of Glass, and I've been doing documentary film for over 20 years. I started in the Boston area, working on Nova shows for WGBH, the PBS station for Boston, and interned with some independent documentary makers and kind of made my way. I moved to Jackson in 2002 and have been focused on community storytelling. I often partner with nonprofits where the themes of the film are in line with the missions of the nonprofits, so we can kind of do something wonderful together. I was very lucky to have the opportunity to cover the first 15 months of Vertical Harvest as a startup.
And that's us. I'm Hannah Boleen. I've been with VH for about 6 years. So I joined right after Jen stopped filming. So I didn't have to, I think I'd be too camera shy for that anyway. So that was good for me. I've had a lot of roles. I've worked in the farm. I've been a manager on the production floor. My current title is Director of Impact and Sustainability. I studied business and sustainability in my master's program, and so was able to kind of come full circle. And now I help with kind of creating our impact and sustainability programs, measurement tools, and yeah, a lot of other things in the organization. But we have 3 main impact areas that I manage, which includes economic inclusion for people with disabilities, as well as climate resilience and agriculture, and nutrition security for those with low income, low access. And this is my coworker, who I will let introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dennis. I've been working at Vertical Harvest July of 2016, a month after I retired from CBRV. And I've been there at Vertical Harvest from to this day on, and hopefully do it a little bit longer. And all that. Actually, I am a grow leader for Vertical Harvest and all that, and just enjoying what I do and all that. So hopefully I can kind of have good questions to answer. So
Perfect. And could you explain a little bit what grow leaders do in the farm, Michelle?
Oh, that's where the person is in charge of making sure stuff is like put together for the next day or the day of, and all that, and I just started doing that.
Yeah.
Maybe middle of last week, and all that. So, and I love it.
Yeah. So our growing teams focus on the obviously the growing of the produce. So things like seeding and harvesting, those are the things that you're getting together. Whereas some of our kind of packaging and fulfillment people are focused on packaging the produce and then getting it to customers. So yeah, I think that's a great overview though.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we're happy to answer any questions for you. Has this group already seen Hearts of Glass, or are some of you still waiting to see it? No, everyone's seen it. Great. Glad to hear it.
Do you want us to cover any of the questions, Linda, that you sent us earlier? Or do you want us to read them out or?
If everybody's going to be shy, everybody that's here wrote some of those questions. So,
Okay.
and then there were just a few more. So I think they were very similar ones. So yeah, you can start reading a few and then they can chime in if they have something else.
Okay. So these will mostly be for you, Michelle, and you, Hannah, because they're a lot about replication. As usual, people are very interested in could something like this happen, in this case in Alabama? How and what steps could we do here in Alabama to see a program like this developed? And there are some sort of follow-up questions. One that I think is relevant is, would teaming up with colleges and vocational programs help?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw this question. So Vertical Harvest is replicating. We are going to other cities. We've got our flagship farm here in Jackson, Wyoming. Our next farm that's a much larger scale is opening at the end of this year outside of Portland, Maine. And we've also signed an LOI to go to Detroit. That being said, the only way to get something like this going in your community is not to get Vertical Harvest to come to a city in Alabama, because we've got, it takes a while to kind of build a farm like ours. I think starting with things around employment first legislation and sub-minimum wages is a great place to think about from a policy standpoint. I did check, and Alabama has no employment first or sub-minimum wage bans in the state, which means people with disabilities can be paid sub-minimum wages in places like a sheltered workshop. So that's something that we're advocating for. Even within our home state of Wyoming, we also have no legislation. But certain states like Maine, where we are replicating to, have banned sub-minimum wages, even though the federal government still allows for it. And then beyond that, I think there's a lot of models that we tried, or, friends of ours, business, company friends of ours that we like to monitor, have tried as well to look at how to incentivize disability employment in your state. Certain programs that really worked for incentivizing and helping Vertical Harvest get off the ground look like the Medicaid waiver program. It doesn't function the same in every state, but educating employers about the Medicaid program or other ways to subsidize training programs for employers is a great place to start, because people are usually worried about the training demand, and that's exactly what a job support does, is sort of lower the burden for a for-profit employer, because you're training someone along with their support, right, until that 1 to 5 times, and then their support is staying with them to keep training, that 20, 100, 500, whatever, how many times that person needs. So that's one way that we came into Vertical Harvest with an expert on the Medicaid waiver, because one of our co-founders, Caroline Este, who you saw in the film, was, a provider in that area for a very long time and still is to this day. But, other businesses don't have that. And I think education on Medicaid waiver or other incentive programs that your Department of Labor run, a lot of employers are just not aware of. Another pathway that we've used before is similar, but with nonprofit people, groups who subsidize training. So that looks like nonprofits that focus on placement of individuals with disabilities or other marginalized populations. We've worked also with a nonprofit who places, single mothers, for example, and they're placing people with employment and subsidizing, the first month to 3 months of their training. So all of these things kind of incentivize businesses and help coach them into how to best incorporate people with disabilities into their workplace. So I think that they're great ways to get these things going. I'll just mention two other avenues that we use heavily. One is transition academies. So if your high schools have transition academies, getting businesses paired with transition students. We've also done this actually with day hab facilities as well, but getting students in transition academies into internship programs. We call ours, a job experience program. It is paid, it's low paid, like an internship would be, again, but still above minimum wage. And so those are opportunities for employers to get used to working with people with disabilities, to, not maybe expect them to fully come straight into the job, but to really understand them as an intern and someone who's learning in the business and learning skills for themselves as well. That program works with us in our community. It also works with other employers in our community. I know like TJ Maxx in our community and some of the local breweries work with the Transition Academy to facilitate internships. And then finally, the last thing I like to mention is if people are afraid of working with people with disabilities, the odds are they already are, and they just don't know it. Because as the largest minority in the US, you're talking about 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 adults that have a disability. And usually what most businesses are not seeing is kind of a lack of reporting. And so I think there's education and incentive to get people with disabilities into the workplace, but also doing that facilitates, I think, encouragement of disclosure practices. And getting people to really understand that they're already working with people with disabilities, and that we all need to make our workplaces more inclusive of that, because we can then all understand where we're coming from and support each other in the workplace. That was a lot. I have a lot of thoughts on this.
But what do you really think, Hannah?
We've got things. Do you have anything to add, Michelle, from your experience
Of working?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've never done any harvesting or anything in my life,
Yeah.
and all that. And since I've started, I've done various positions and everything. But yeah, I love it. I mean, I don't want to be solo at something that I can hopefully help. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully I can help someone learn that it's not that hard
Yeah.
and all that. So
That's a great point, actually, that you're making, because while some people may start with a job support or subsidization of their training via a nonprofit or Department of Labor program or whatever that looks like, we ultimately try to work towards people in the workplace being naturally supported, meaning they are supported in a normal work setting by their managers and peers, right? And so we do work towards natural supports, as long as there's not a health or safety concern, like if someone needs to do deliveries but can't drive, for
Did you give the
example.
puppies your extra chicken?
Then they would still work with their support for those tasks. But otherwise, we work towards natural supports. And even Michelle, you as a manager have supported others in the farm, such as Scotty, who came in maybe with a job support for a little bit, but then transitioned away to their job support and to just having you as their manager.
okay.
Yeah.
I gotta fix my chair.
Looks like there's a hand up, maybe. Or Jen, I'm not sure if you had anything to add.
Did I have a hand up? I didn't mean to. If I did.
No, it looks like Renee.
Yeah. Renee.
Hey, yes, I'm so glad that y'all are here. I loved the movie, or the, I guess, documentary. I have 2 questions. One is from June, who I don't think can talk right now, but she wanted for each of you to kind of share how your lives have been impacted by your connection with the farm, and I think some of y'all have answered that a little bit already. My question is for the kind of the administration or the like Hannah
I'm
for you. Hello? Oh, sorry. Hannah, for you. What kind of training was expected prior to you being hired, and are you trained more on the job? Like, what's your educational background?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we can knock off this first one and then go to the more thoughtful question. Basically, it depends on the position, but for most roles, especially when we were first opening the farm, we're looking for entry-level employees. And therefore, disability or not, no one needed to show up at the farm with skills specific to hydroponic farming. Number one, that just doesn't even exist in the US today, period. So we have to train our workforce either way, which might be different from other industries that are working on disability employment. But in our case, no one really has an experience in it. And that was part of the beauty of kind of saying, let's start this innovative project with an integrated workforce from the day one and figure this out together. What we do, but prior to a farm opening and what happened in Jackson is what we call pre-applicant training, where we did around 3 months of training prior to the farm being fully operational to make sure that everyone has a basic understanding of what it's like to work on a production floor. That's important for us because we have concerns around worker safety and food safety that need to be held up, right? For anyone to enter on the production floor. From there is ongoing on-the-job training, cross-training, as well as a lot of on-the-job learning, right? Because a lot of what we do, we do learn by doing, but we have continuous training for things like food safety, worker safety, right? And also sort of life skills training on things that benefit us all, like communication. And we do specialized training once people get into tracks. So we have kind of 3 major tracks for growers who work on, like Michelle, planting the plants, monitoring them through, pest scouting, things like that. We've got operators who manage things like our packaging floor, or just manage people in general. And then we've got our facilities track, which handles a lot of the maintenance. So once people get into specialized tracks, there's more advanced trainings and further on the job training as well that people go through. Once a farm is going, though, we've got a substantial chunk of our workforce. We still need to keep training for, new hires, because we will need to fill roles beneath people as they move up, or maybe some people move away. And so that's largely where our job experience program comes in, which is primarily with the Transition Academy, but also we, work with placements from partner organizations like Day Hab Facilities, for example. So there's a ton of training that goes in. Our facility needs that, period. So for us, I feel like we don't see it as a burden because we need to know that it's understood really, really well. And this is where a lot of facilities like ours fail, is that they fail to train their workers adequately. So that's a lot of it. Right, Michelle? Did I miss any types of training?
No.
No? Did I get them all? Did I answer? Renee, do you have any follow-up questions on training programs? I kind of spit them off.
I don't think so. I think because of our background and just kind of what I'm familiar with, each person that would then be kind of leading a team or whatever would have to have like a rec therapy background or a special education background, or like it really limits the population that we can pull from but there's so many other appropriate individuals.
Yeah, so that, I mean, most of our managers do not have that background. to be really clear. And
Good.
and so that's an important distinction. We do have our what we call our Grow Well model is the employment model and all of the sort of trainings and tools that it encompasses. So we train all managers on basically how we expect them to show up as a manager in our workplace. We call it human potential training. And that just includes understanding of disability literacy. It also includes some sort of information on how to use the tools that we give them, which include things like our empowerment plan is a way that you talk through with all employees, again, disability or not, what's your communication style? How comfortable are you with technology? What accommodations are we going to make together? So a lot of these tools we developed as a way to make sure that we could integrate people with disabilities into the workplace. But now they've kind of been extrapolated to our entire employment model because we've realized all of these things are not just for people with disabilities. They're management science about how to manage people well, how to communicate well, and how to work together to get things done. And we do disability literacy training, and we talk a lot about, advocacy opportunities, but we actually try and stay away from training our managers on, let's say, like specific disabilities, on doing trainings on how to manage people with autism or how to manage people with a learning disability. We kind of tell people to be a good manager, you need to just get to know your people. And not that necessarily, if your employee wants to talk about what their diagnosis is and what that means for them in terms of accommodations, that's great. But you don't need a diagnosis to get to know someone and figure out how you're going to communicate together and work together. So I think our accommodation framework is supposed to be built to kind of support employees in that way. We also have, a Grow Well director in the farm who is essentially kind of the keeper of making sure that all of our programs, our coaching tools, our trainings are being implemented in the way that we want to see them, and running a lot of that. But most of our managers do not have a background in case management or working with people with disabilities.
I love all of that. I love that it's individualized to the individual as it should be and not based on a perceived diagnosis or even a real one.
Yeah.
I think it's unfortunately innovative. I wish it wasn't. I wish it was every day, but it's definitely innovative. And I appreciate what y'all do.
Yeah. Well, very open-minded people, like we still get pushback. People say, okay, like, can we receive training on how to work with people with autisms? And we have to say, no, we're not going to do that. Here are some tools that we've used. Here's we have a whole list of examples of types of communication that we've used, and we go through those preferences with everyone kind of proactively. Do you prefer verbal or nonverbal communication? Are you sensitive to loud noises? And talking through all of these preferences, communication, and work styles is how we get to know someone, as opposed to trying to do a training on how to, manage people with autism, which, that example I'm using just because how could you even, the spectrum of autism is so vast that you need to just get to know who you're working with, So we have a lot of tools that guide people through those conversations, but we aren't going to give specific trainings for diagnoses.
And just Hannah, when you were talking about managers, there are people with disabilities in management positions. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Like Michelle, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's part of the goal, to move from representation, right, which just means that we have employees with disabilities, into true integration, which means for us, things like employee engagement numbers, as well as do we have people with disabilities making it into management roles? Because that's critically, like, is our training program work to move everyone forward and give everyone opportunities for advancement? not everyone's goal is to move into a management role. And so we have, again, personal conversations with managers and employees to say, what are your, career aspirations that we want to work towards, set professional goals, and then we have weekly coaching with our employees to work towards professional goals or growth rees, right? Where we talk about what your professional goals are, what the goals of the business are, and how we can, train, make accommodations, or work towards those things together. Because some people don't want to be a manager. They want to manage plants, not people. And that is not just for our employees with disabilities. But I think, yeah, it's been a process in terms of figuring out how to move people towards that, especially when people need a lot of soft skill training is kind of a major factor. So how do we train for communication skills, for things like data management is something we do a lot of, and that, Michelle, you handle a lot of now as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
For the last 2 weeks now.
Yeah, there you go. So there's a lot of things that we can try people in terms of maybe it's managing people, but maybe you're working towards, we do a lot of practice just informally with you're in charge of a seating team, right? Or public speaking skills we have a weekly all team meeting. So a lot of that is to share information and to, do trainings, but it's also for people to practice public speaking and to work towards guiding other people in the workplace. Yeah. I go on and on and on about programs, so I try to stop. I don't know if we want to circle back to Renee's second question, which was submitted via June. I think it was something like, what changed from working with Vertical Harvest, or from, your experience making the film, is that right?
Yes, like the impact, how it's impacted your life.
Yeah. Jen, you want to start with that one?
Sure. So I had very little experience, I think, interacting with community members with disabilities. This film project allowed me to do that. People with disabilities, support providers, parents. I think it gave me an appreciation that even in a small town like Jackson, which has 10,000 people, there's still a lot of things that kept me separate in ways from community members with disabilities. I mean, just social and environmental things that are put in people's way that make it harder for people to interact sort of naturally. And, I think it's been a great opportunity to establish real friendships with people. And I think one of the goals, and I think because I didn't know a lot about disability and I was a little bit paranoid about getting things very wrong and being yelled at, I reached out to University Centers of Excellence in Developmental Disabilities in Wyoming and Montana, the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities, and was lucky to have some advisors. If I did it again, I think, and we had test viewers who had disabilities, but I think best practices, if I did this again, would be to get someone with a disability actually on the production team. Like that would be a really good goal. And a lot of the small things that I've done since the film, in terms of videos, I've tried to put people I know with disabilities more in the driver's seat of what we're communicating in a video. So that's a long, rambly way of saying that I've learned a tremendous amount. I'm sure I still have a tremendous amount to learn, but it's really valuable work, and I'm happy to be continuing to share this story and seeing the impact that it has on others.
What about you, Michelle? How has working at Vertical Harvest impacted you personally?
Actually quite good. I mean, I didn't know anything about microgreens or anything, and once I started working there and got into the ropes of knowing things, I mean, it's been really nice and all that, and by the end of the day, I want to go home and go to bed. No, just kidding. Sorry. But yeah, so I mean it's been really nice, and I even get my exercise going upstairs with my Fitbit and all that. So I mean I just enjoy walking and all that, and just getting my stuff done, and oh, I'm done now for the day and all that. So but yeah, it's real nice.
Yeah, I think the integration is very powerful. I kind of think about it in terms of ripple effects. You know, there's sort of this primary goal of professional development for people with disabilities, but we have kind of secondary goals of personal growth as well as community integration for everyone. I think that the community that I've built within the farm and then our tentacles into the community here have given me so much joy and sense of community in my life that is extremely important, especially as a non-native to Jackson. I've been here for about 7 years, but this isn't where my family is from. I don't know everyone, and so to go and see my coworkers in I mostly see Michelle and Smith's at the grocery store. Tebow, another employee of ours, he was just on a flight back with me last night from spring break. But to have those community connections, I think has had a very positive impact in my life. Our kickball team, right? In addition to just sort of meeting the criteria that I had for myself, obviously, in terms of working for an impact business. So, yeah. Looks like Paula has a question.
Let me unmute. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'll do 2 questions. Michelle, how did you find out about Vertical Harvest and that they were hiring, and what made you go to them? And then second question is, if someone were to, let's say, take the harvest out of it, just a whole different industry, do y'all have like a outline or like a business model of like an inclusion business model that isn't like that could be applied to like any other type of industry, like, or is it the way y'all did things is specifically because of the way Vertical Harvest is set up? And I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just kind of
Yeah, absolutely. Now, first question for you. How did you find out about Vertical Harvest and that they were hiring?
Someone that that I've known for quite a number of years. Her son and my son were like 2 months apart being born. And her name is Caroline Cross Estes, and she used to work at CBRV with Pete for maybe a year and all that. And she's actually the one that informed me on the Vertical Harvest and all that, that they were they had opened in March of 2016, and I guess she had told me probably maybe the end of June of that same year, and just told me about it, and and all that. And I love it because I can't retire yet
No,
or anything. So
Michelle has got too much. She gets things done.
yes, and all that. And then for second, well, I'm trying to think. Second question, yeah, I mean, I pretty much, I don't know the names of the microgreens or anything, so I usually have to go and ask someone what this is before I go,
Yeah,
put it in a black tray
yeah,
and all that. And once I get to know what the seed is, I just go and put it in, and then you have to go punch it down a little so the seed stays in, and then you go put it on a rack, and then you go and you usually have about 20 black trays of one kind, and then you have 4 of another kind,
yeah.
and all that. So, but when it comes to paperwork, I usually have to make sure I don't go and write down something on here that someone already wrote down on their piece of
There you
paper
go.
and all that. So I'm like, okay.
A lot of that training for this paperwork Michelle's talking about is food safety program, it's traceability logs and things like that. So some of that's very specific to
Mhm.
our industry. But I think that the GrowWell tools themselves, aside from kind of the industry specific curriculum, do in fact carry over to other industries, because as I was saying, I think that a lot of it isn't even necessarily specific not only to industry, but to people with disabilities. It's just a more person-centric management style that could and should become more popular. So I think a lot of the tools that we use could translate to many other industries. And just thinking about I think the type of roles that are within a company and pairing that with the skill sets. We do that through things like our job experience program, where we're testing people in a lot of different roles and finding a good fit for them. We also are in an industry that has entry level positions. So, you know, what industries do have entry level positions for unskilled workers? That's one place to start. There's other areas like Ability Jobs that are working on posting jobs for people with disabilities in the skilled labor market, in terms of people who are getting college degrees. You know, the Microsoft program became very famous for their work with individuals with autism in particular. But Ability Jobs is kind of a platform, and there's a few others coming out now for people with disabilities that are job seeking. But I think in terms of replication in your city, yeah, it just depends upon more, I think, the skill level of jobs that you're looking for, and implementing human-centric management tools as opposed to the industry itself.
And I was just going to continue on the early on, we had a question about partnering with community colleges and vocational colleges. There's another program, an umbrella program, Think College, that creates inclusive post-secondary programs. And you know, they some have degrees, some are, you know, some are certifications, some are not, but most of them are fully inclusive on campus, and people do get opportunities, job internships and sort of discovery in that vein about what people are most interested in. They get opportunity, people get opportunities to do that. So that's also, you know, you could maybe advocate for that in some of your community colleges. And I think it's been very valuable to people to think sort of beyond high school. and to get some additional job skills.
Yeah, because not everyone who comes into our job experience also does so with the intention of getting a job with us. Just like an internship, they're trying it out. Maybe they like it and they hope to get a job offer from us. And if they, work well with what the current needs of the businesses are, then yes, we can offer them, a full-time position with Vertical Harvest. Other people's goals are to just have a real work experience and gain transferable skills. And we've had, pretty successful transfers with, of sort of retail skills when we ran our market space and farmers markets to then, people going to work for TJ Maxx or Target or whatever, because retail was really what they liked. And then, there's been other kind of interest in our community with the internship program and with the Transition Academy program to work towards, whichever industry they want to be in. But some of those entry level programs is, I think, what you're speaking to. And then when you get into voc rehab community colleges, you're maybe looking at more of, skilled job placement. So yeah. Who else has a question?
So I'm glad you mentioned Think College. For our next session in April, we're having someone from the National Think College. And each year we've had someone from Tuscaloosa and Auburn, and we're hoping from somebody from USA, which is another part of our state, come and talk about their Think Colleges and what that entails.
Yeah, I think Auburn's program has been around a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no. And by the way, every time you say Michelle's name,
This Michelle, you think I'm talking to you?
I'm like, what? Okay.
Michelle 1L, yeah.
Michelle 1L and Michelle 2L.
Perfect.
Michelle Gavan. I live in Chelsea, Alabama. And my question that I just posted involves unintended positives. So when you guys were developing your mission statement and all of those kinds of things, I'm sure you had certain things like leadership development and all of those kinds of things as, part of the employment at Vertical Harvest. Were there any unplanned positive?
Oh, we are a startup. There was a lot of unplanned positives. Yes, absolutely. I mean, they talk about this in the film, but number one, when Vertical Harvest was first kind of coming together as a vision, it did not include the employment model. It just was a farm, a local vertical farm. Caroline came in as, a case manager for people with disabilities and said, this is a problem that we're experiencing in our community. Can you help solve this as well? And Nona, another founder and the architect of the building, also has a brother with disabilities. And so she was very excited to do this. But actually a lot of investors, and I think they talk about this in the film as well, said, can you just get the farm up and running and then maybe do the employment thing later? And they said, no, we're going to start these together. I think that the intersectionality of trying to solve multiple problems at once is incredibly powerful in terms of taking a systems approach to impact, in terms of creating multidimensional impact, and is super important. Starting this hydroponic farm was complicated, and there was, we had an expert along the way in Caroline to help us best navigate how to build this employment model. But the employment model was not built out with all of its, rigor that we have now in terms of here's the program structure, here's the, what we measure, all of these pieces. In the beginning, it was really just, we're in this startup and we all have to come together and figure out how to do this together. Does that sound true to your experience in the farm in the beginning too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. And so many things came out of that. I think one of our values as a business is showing up with a beginner mindset, because we recognize that in an innovative field, we could have gone and hired a very fancy plant scientist, but we would not have the farm that we have today, and the employment model that we have today. And I think we look back now and we say, even when there was a lot of struggles with the plants, the one thing that we got right was the people, because that built a resilient workforce, a workforce that has stayed with us. 30% of our workforce has been at the farm since we opened our doors in 2016. And so all of those things, learning this together, I think just created such a camaraderie. And there was a lot of tools along the way that were employee-led, that we still use today, like our weekly boosts I mentioned is our all staff stand-up. And that really started because we needed a touch base in the middle of the chaos of the week to say, okay, let's all regroup. Where is our morale at? Let's get focused on what we're trying to accomplish the rest of the week. And now the boost has become, like a staple of our week, right? Because it's our opportunity for engagement, for life skill training, for all of these different things that contribute to feeling supported and building that team environment in a farm, right? Because it's a big team that's all trying to work every week amongst this chaos, amongst this cycle of plant, harvest, package, get it to customers, to get all of that done. And not everything goes right all of the time. So tools like that evolved over time that created a ton of unintended positives. And I think the biggest overarching unintended positive that I mentioned was that, Grow Well started as building these special tools with Caroline's expertise and with employee-led, initiatives to kind of think about how do we best support people with disabilities. We ended up with an employment model that better supports all of our employees and, have expanded all of that programming within the last 3 years to cover all of our employees. And I think I've seen and heard really positive feedback. I mean, I know I like working in a human-centered workplace where people care about my professional development, personal growth, and community integration. And so I think that became one of the largest positive unintended sort of outcomes, is that culture that we built. And it's very clear in the industry that people respect and know that we are different because of that.
And
Thank
also,
you.
I think for positive, what was it? Unplanned positives. I think the one scene that says it all for me is when Johnny is the unicorn at the kid's birthday party, and he's like had 15 months of chaos with Vertical Harvest a little bit. And so, I mean, it did make people a little bit more comfortable with last minute changes and things not always going right. So yeah, it's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah. A lot of great unintended positives. Like another and very important employee-led initiative was the monthly dance off. Yeah.
Oh.
That, I mean, that's why we love working here. Paula has her hand up. You are muted.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Oh, you think I learn, but I don't ever learn.
Yeah.
So my son, he just turned 5. His thing is logos. He's obsessed with logos. He's just, Jen, when you said WGBH and PBS. I was like, he's gonna come busting through this door because I also think he has supersonic hearing. Anyway, I think you said you hadn't had a lot of experience with people with disabilities until this film you were making. Since working on this film, have you had any ideas or thoughts about your next film or doing anything similar but different with the disability community?
So I think it's a little daunting for me to take on a whole new film. I've done 4 independent documentaries and they're a ton of work. And this is one that really we have an impact campaign for, and it's been great to continue to have that impact. And I think as a business person, you don't want to abandon something where you feel there's still value there. But what I do is, although we should be focused on disability rights 365 days a year, there are certain dates, months. We're in autism awareness and neurodiversity, acceptance month. And, I continue to do videos with people that I've met through the years at Vertical Harvest and try to sort of capture if they want to say something, because I think working at Vertical Harvest has put advocacy kind of toward the front. I continue to interact with community members and hopefully continue to learn, and also do a little bit of preaching to the unconverted. So we're going to be in a film festival in Wisconsin next week, and it's not a disability focused film festival. I've already seen some things that they've posted that have made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, where they said they describe Vertical Harvest as a haven for people with disabilities. And I was like, don't say that. Yeah. And then I was just like, let it go. I'll deal with it when I'm there. Yeah. So I think what I've learned from coming in is it's nice to meet people where they are and kind of ask the questions. Most times people want to be respectful and want to learn, and it's nice to give people the benefit of the doubt. So I'd like to continue to be an ally, and I know that my husband is over 20 years older than I am, and I will be dealing with disability. I'm already dealing with some disability, and it's a club we can join at any point in our lives. So I think it's important to recognize that this is simply part of being human. And yeah, I just it's been a good experience. It's made me more aware. Or more accepting. Forget the aware. Aware is very passive. Accepting is supposed to be more of an action. I'm accepting and I'm annoying now to people. I'm like, hey, when people say things like wheelchair bound, and I'm like, hey, let me unpack that for you. Let me just share a little stuff about that. Why maybe you don't want to say that. You can still say it, but yeah, I try to be less annoying than I really am.
Well,
I can't be doing that.
I guess one thing to be annoying about, which is probably on all of your radars, is the SSI Savings Penalty Eliminations Act, which we are currently running an employee advocacy campaign around too. There are easy ways to write your senators and representatives through the ARC to help to increase basically the savings account limits for people receiving SSI benefits. So just one little annoying plug in case it wasn't already on your radar, but I'm sure it was.
We are aware, and that's what we're doing in Partners in Policymaking, is looking
Love
at
it.
all of these.
I knew
all
with
of these-
partners in policymaking that you had to be in the know, but yeah.
Yes, and last weekend we had a session and we had 3 state lawmakers come for talk with our group, and they stayed for a couple hours, and it was really amazing.
That's great.
So they've done a lot of advocacy already.
Yes. We had a great session facilitated by Mary Fashik, who is a disability advocate and a person with a disability. And she, one thing I really loved about her presentation, and we, are aware of kind of the SSI restrictions, especially as an employer, and having to make blended income models, right? And maybe not pay someone what we would even like to, because, they're making this trade-off between their SSI benefits and, what their pay would be with us. So we make customized plans for people with blended, income to decide how they want to handle that. Do they want to come off SSI someday? Do they not? What does that look like in terms of your hours versus your hourly rate and the different things? But one thing I really liked from Mary Fashik's presentation was really explaining kind of even further the ripple effects of, the SSI savings cap. One that's really being advocated for with this bill is obviously, marriage inequality. But I really feel like that barrier is just, it's keeping people in poverty. And this is the next civil rights movement still. Like, we have the ADA and everything, but it blows my mind. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or what you remember when Mary Fashik came to do a training with us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. It was a while ago.
Yeah, it was last summer, I think. But yeah, she was quite good, and I guess everyone was really into her conversations and all that, and then answered I guess quite a few of our coworkers actually asked quite a bit of questions, and she actually answered quite well.
Yeah.
And all that. So
I'm embarrassed to admit that I hadn't heard of her, but
There you go. Well, she's a
Yeah.
great advocate. She's written a few, she just wrote a new children's book as well, but we got connected
and
to
she's
her.
Lebanese born, like
Yes.
she's Lebanese, like Nona. Yeah.
This is why this was part of like the crazy connection world that
Right.
all came together. But yeah, that's what a lot of our disability literacy training looks like in terms of bringing in advocates like Mary, also with our own employees and the JEDI committee that we run.
What does JEDI stand for?
Justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Awesome sauce.
I'm glad I didn't forget any of those, because
I know, that was so good. You
JEDI
didn't even
committee.
hesitate.
I'm not on the
That's
JEDI
good.
committee actually, but I with running Impact, we have a few employee committee groups, JEDI, community outreach, and worker safety, which is generally best practice in terms of, how do you engage your workforce as, one of your most valuable stakeholders to give input back into the way things are working. But even with the JEDI committee, they run a lot of our disability literacy training internally, with all of their lived experience, in terms of having great debates, sometimes heated debates about language and representation and how we do all of those things, to the best of our abilities. So as a business. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. We may be coming up towards the end of our time here, but I'm not sure if anyone has any last questions for us. Michelle, do you have anything you want to add about Integrated employment. Put her
Uh,
on the spot.
oh,
She's like, I worked all day. Leave me alone.
oh, well, actually, just got real busy today. All of us had to come in a little early today, and everybody sat around the long table and everything, and then took
We're
half
yeah.
an hour or so, but yeah, we actually had the boost from 12:30 to 1:15 and all that, so it,
There you
yeah.
go. It was a full day of life at the Jackson Farm. The Jackson Farm is receiving some updated equipment, as well as a more advanced food safety program. So all of this has meant a lot of upskilling, training in the farm, and a lot of new routines for people. So it's been great to kind of give this time and space for everyone to level up, as we kind of look to improve a lot of the systems in this farm from what we've learned over the last 7 years of continuous operation. Bless you. And thanks, June, for your shout out. Yeah. Yes, Michelle with 2 L's.
Thank you. This final note, I want to say how much I appreciate you guys coming here. But my final question is, was employee leadership development intentional from the beginning?
Probably not from the beginning, because in the beginning, as you saw, there was a lot of we have to figure out how to operate these systems together. I think a lot of leadership came out of that. You do see that there is intentional training even in Jen's film, you see Micah Miller practicing answering the phone in market. So there was training around people's different goals. So there was a little bit of intention there, but I think that the more we've learned, the more intentional it's gotten in terms of thinking about things that came later that I spoke to, kind of included like the professional development tracks that I described and how you build all of those things. Because in the beginning, it's almost like almost everyone in there is entry level, disability or not, and we've got to figure out how to run this thing. So it did start off with the vision of, our be well, work well, do well pillars in terms of personal, professional, and community integration, and some of those guiders. But I think we've gotten more and more intentional, especially as our entry level employees with disabilities, right, have gotten to a point where their goals are to move up. Then we had to kind of build those programs, right? So I think that's part of it as well. It was a lot of learning by doing trial by fire in the early days. And we took the unintended positives, the great nuggets from that really built the intentional program, which was a lot of my job actually when I transitioned from being a farm manager, being in there as a grower every day, to this new, impact role that I transitioned to about 3 years ago or so. Like that was my job, was to formalize these programs, really to create what is that theory of change framework. How do we get not just good enough and tell stories about how we're making this impact, but how do we measure it? How do we get structure? Because we were getting ready to, try and replicate, bring this to other cities. So, yeah. We pulled it all together. I think there was a lot of leadership built into that experience, though, of, you saw in the film, like the go big or go home. You were there for that, right? Like there was a lot of asking people to show up ready to learn and ready to contribute. And, you know, like learned helplessness was not tolerated. It was like, no, I don't know what I'm doing either. We're going to figure this out together, you know? So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Strong finish, strong finish. So Paula, you'll have to give me your mailing address. I will send your son a logo, a sticker for the film.
My goodness, he will lose his mind.
Awesome. That's the effect I have on young men. They just lose their mind.
Thank you. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you all for spending time with us and being advocates in this space. If you have any other questions, Jen can get you in contact with us.
Good luck with the rest of your, is this the wrap up for the course, or do you still have?
We're just
No.
midway.
Midway. All right. Well, I wish you a productive second half of HIPAA.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good
Goodbye. It was
night.
nice to meet you all.
So that was fun. That was great. I don't have anything else for us tonight. That was the PowerPoint. It was just questions. We can go back over. You have the space. If y'all want to stay, you want to discuss projects, you want to discuss them individually, you want to go off in groups amongst yourselves. You just let me know what you'd like to do.
Did you say the aim statement and elevator speech and things like that, those were due, did those have a due date on them, or we're just supposed to be thinking about them?
I don't know that there's a due date on them. It's just really to look at them and to see what's coming. That's what I like to do. I like to see what's gonna come at me and what I need to do and look at it. Like I said, and there are questions and there's like, how is it phrased or what does that mean? And then once you start really getting into, so we really want you to start thinking about your project. That's why Holly was here and kind of gave you a background and overview of when you're thinking about your project, see where it's going to fit in and align it and choose. So we'll choose which of the 5-year plan, which one of the goals and highlights where it will fit in. And then we'll start fine tuning that and you'll submit what you want your project proposal. I don't have a definite timeline on that. We'll be able to talk a little bit more next session or between then and figure it out. We will put a due date on when we want you to submit what you're thinking about. So it will be coming up pretty soon. So you can start talking amongst yourselves. You can do it on GroupMe. You can do it individually. Like I said, if there's people that are doing like topics, working together, you get a lot done. It's always fun to do that. So just kind of see what you want to do. I didn't have that ready for tonight to see what everybody did last year. And so you can see that was the first year we let them do groups. So you kind of see who grouped together and what they did. And you can see the first years, what their projects were, and then the second year with the group. So I'll put that, I'll send that to you so you'll see that, maybe give you some more inspiration or some ideas on what you want to do. But if you've got something you wanted, we're going to give you the templates where you can start filling those in and maybe it'll help you be a little more intentional about it. And like I said, we want a time frame. We wanted you to get a finite little piece of what your big picture would look like so you can feel like an accomplishment was done. Like if you start to finish. So even if it's a bigger project, you're gonna do this piece of it, and that's gonna be your project for partners.
Miss Linda,
Veronica,
this is Adley. I'm gonna have to log off. My computer's trying to die on me.
gotcha.
I will see y'all in a couple weeks.
Like Veronica McGee is gonna come and talk with you on next Wednesday about the accessible housing, and that was one of her projects, but that's what she was working on with her son, and she wanted to do it. And when she started, she didn't have all of those pieces put together. Now she's talked with somebody in California. She's brought them. They're interested in Alabama. She's doing some things in Birmingham. I mean, it's just amazing what she has started with. And she didn't have someone working with her project, but talking with them and the people from the DD network that she got information from, it just kind of has helped her. We're all still attending some of the meetings, so it's just really fascinating to see that kind of project on a larger scale come to fruition. And like with Kim and Colby and their act, you know, they got that passed. So projects can be big, projects can be small. And this is our upcoming session.
I've had my hand raised, but you probably can't see it. It's probably blended into the background.
There, I see it now.
Yeah, I'm gonna change the color back to yellow.
There was something else that popped up on top. I couldn't see it at all. I've got so many things on my screen.
All meetings that I'm in.
I got a lot going on my screen.
Oh, two questions. One, earlier when I asked about exclusivity for the audience or whatever, but the question I was at, well, I guess what I was trying to say is there are people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who have comorbid disabilities. For example, they may have a learning disability in addition to an intellectual disability. So does my project need to be just exclusive to people who only have an IDD, or a person with IDD who also has comorbidities?
No, there's no stipulation on that population.
And where is the next our next session is virtual. It's not in person.
Correct. And the following one in May will be in person at the same hotel we were just in at UAB Hilton.
Okay. Okay, I just caught that virtual part. Thanks.
You're welcome. And the May session, I'll go ahead and give you a little prep for that. I know you've heard us talk a lot about it. I work for the USAID. I know Jennifer mentioned that she reached out to the USAID in Wyoming for assistance. So I work for the USAID. Daryl and Holly work for the Alabama Council for Developmental Disabilities, and then Nancy and Nikki work for ADAP. And we're going to have a network, a Alabama Disability Network, ADDN. We're going to have an annual network meeting. And that is going to be from 12 to 2 before we start PIPA on our May session. And prior to that, the DD Council is going to have their, I think they have quarterly meetings. So they're going to be there at the UAB Hilton Thursday afternoon and then Friday morning from 9 to 12. Anybody is welcome to join it. It's an open meeting. It will be right where we are going to have our PIPA meeting later. So there will be DD Network meetings going from 9 to 12, and then the DD Network, which you're invited to, which is lunch before your partner's meeting at 2. So plan for a big day on May 17th. And going into the lineup that will join us for PIPA will be the commissioner for ADRS, Jane Elizabeth Burdishaw, and some other people from mental health, talking about employment and what their supports are and what they want to do, what the vision is. And the last couple of years, we've had someone from the Alabama Workforce Development Council, and bringing the disability conversation to them, which they kind of knew about it and had it on the radar, but over the last few years, they've really developed a better camaraderie with us and putting that in. There's been a lot of talk about the Governor Ivey's new workforce, whatever. It's like our disability language is seeping out into that too. So they'll be great for you to hear what they're going to say, and then have a lot of questions for them too, what you'd like to see in our state. Mandy, I see your hand raised.
Hello, everyone. I was just going to say I would love to hear some examples of what people have done in the past, because I'm afraid that I am thinking I need to narrow in, and hearing what other people are thinking would help me, especially doing groups. I messaged with Veronica before I was accepted, and just to ask her, I looked on LinkedIn and I was like, just anybody with any information. I was really excited and happy that she messaged me back, and she was like, you absolutely need to, get in this. You've got the right set of mind, and to see, I've done more research into what she's done, and it's amazing to me. I don't want to bite off too much, but so the examples would really help me. And I don't know, and I need to utilize GroupMe a lot more to see what everybody else is thinking, to see where we could work together if some of us have similar ideas. There's so much to that possibility.
There is. And I guess I could also pull the recordings, because at the graduation weekend, we have you present your project. I'll give you a PowerPoint template, and you do the whole project and what you started on and where you've gotten, maybe if you've completed it or wherever you are in there, and you have your aim statement, your elevator speech, your project planning guide. You'll have all that to put in there and then talk about it. So we can look at some of those recordings too.
Cool.
They'll give you even more than just the snapshot of what I'm going to send you on paper. So
okay,
we've got a lot of information that you can look at and share.
I also just want to say, lastly, I have bragged to so many people about the last session. I just feel like it was so informative, and just a fantastic experience. And I'm so grateful. Like, that was awesome. It was awesome. I thank you guys.
You're welcome. We agree. This is Mr. Bergman's third year to join us, and each year he gives it his all. We're lucky to have those three congresswomen with us too. Not congresswomen, but the representatives. That was a big treat. So good. So we will see you virtually. It's a little earlier start time because we're trying to fit in some more speakers that said yes. So 1:30, and we'll see you then. And we'll show it on Canvas and make sure everybody has access to the projects coming up. Thank you all.